start and welcome everyone. My name's Elizabeth. Thank you everyone for joining us today. So I'm one of the co-founders, co-owners of Extraordinary Journeys. There I am with my mother, Marcia Gordon, who started the company with me. When we started the company, the whole goal was to really create these unique and life-changing experiences, first in Africa, and then we expanded beyond Africa. To give you a little bit of background, my mother had lived in Africa in the 60s. She owned a safari company with my father. They sold the business. I started this new company with my mother, really focusing on the custom travel. And then since I grew up, I was in Africa, I grew up in Europe, I also lived in South America, I lived in Namibia again. We also expanded beyond Africa. So let's see, just to show you, I mean, we've grown. It's no longer just Marcia and myself. I think we have an amazing team, passionate travelers, down to earth, like to listen, just really want to share amazing experiences for people. And that's something we're really proud of. And I think everyone's just very hardworking. They really kind of go out of their way to make sure people have a great trip. Also, in terms of the destinations where we've expanded, we really did start off in Africa, but now we do offer Antarctica. Kim in our office has been there a few times. India, North Africa, the Middle East, a lot of Australia and New Zealand, for example. Pearl in our office used to live in Tasmania. We also have the United States. So, a lot of, and I see South America, actually I missed South America on the list. And I used to live in Argentina and I speak perfect Spanish. And, we actually have Emily in our team who also has a lot of experience in South America. So no longer just Africa, and kind of the same experiences we had in Africa, we started expanding in other places, of course. So this year has been quite a year, 2020, not the year we expected. And so March, basically everything shut down. It was very exciting getting people out of countries really fast, but we did get everyone back into the United States. I mean, a lot of last minute calls, who's on the ground, which countries shutting their border. So it was very quiet. And then in June, the first country to really open up to Americans was Tanzania. And our first client decided to keep their trip and go in July. So we were a little nervous. It was our first trip that we'd planned in a really long time. There are a lot of new requirements. We were trying to figure out all the new all the new requirements for all the different countries. We weren't even sure what airlines were traveling out there, but our first clients were determined. And I'm really grateful that they went because it helped us feel more comfortable with the whole process. So they went in July, and since then we've had 32 travelers to Africa, 4 countries so far: Kenya, Rwanda, Tanzania, and a last minute trip to Zambia that happened last week. That was our first Zambia client, and it went really, really well. Knock on wood, so far, everything's gone very smoothly. I think, honestly, it's because we have such a good network of people in the United States, but also on the ground. I also talk with all my competitors. Oops, is there an echo a little bit, maybe? Also talk to my competitors. I get a lot of feedback on what is happening, and that intelligence is what's allowed us to make these trips smooth and have no problems on the ground. Follow us on Instagram. I mean, it's been really fun to see what people are posting. A lot of our travelers are putting photos up, and for us it's been a lot of fun to connect with them and see what they're doing. So for example, this is one of our repeat clients. She decided to do a very last minute trip to Tanzania. She has traveled multiple times to Africa, but she'd never seen the wildebeest migration. And she decided to go see it while there were no crowds. So, she got to see that was her experience. She wasn't going to do it any other time. And we made it happen. And that got booked in a week. These are other clients who decided to go gorilla trekking. This is from their Instagram. They also went to see Daphne Sheldrake in Nairobi. They went gorilla trekking. You see the little gorillas in the back. Here's the gorillas right close to them. There are only, for example, 6 people per group right now when you go trekking for gorilla trekking instead of 8. A lot of connection with the teams on the ground. I think this is just a very unique time. So you can see them here with the staff in Virunga. This is from their iPhone. This is out in Amara. Another client who just returned 2 days ago. That's them. And again, in Kenya, another client, that's their honeymoon. That's them live. here's a really good example of how we've helped them. I mean, they were supposed to go to Kenya, then Tanzania. I mean, we had to change. I mean, Lara actually on this trip had to change this trip, I mean, on a whim, basically. And we made it all happen and all worked out perfectly. So that's them there in the Serengeti. This is another client that WhatsApped this photo 2 days ago. Really exciting. You know, people are going to the beach. Another group that's out on the beach, and it is 3 people. Why do you have multiple legs? The beach in Kenya. And this morning, we literally got this feedback from a client that just landed. And I think it just says it all. Most of it is they were just able to relax. And it's actually a funny story for these clients is one of them lives in a very small town in Michigan, I think. And he was really worried about getting his COVID test in time. And I had actually personally gone out and tested all the mail-in COVID tests to make sure we could have COVID tests in 24 hours. And we had recommended that he do that as well. Well, we are very thankful he did it because the test he had taken, the results did not come in time, but he got our test results from the mail-in 90 minutes before boarding his flight. So these are just a little examples of the little things we're doing to make sure that these trips are happening. And again, here's just another amazing photo in Kenya. So today we're just very lucky, very lucky. I mean, this is just to show the passion of our team. Lara actually decided to go on a vacation. This was not a work trip. Decided to go to Tanzania, and she came back. Has it been a week, Lara, that you've been back?
A week.
So we just thought, why not, you know, have a conversation, a Q&A, and just have firsthand feedback on someone who's been on the ground. So I'm going to let Lara kind of take it over from there and kind of share her experience. We do want this to be, you know, a discussion, a Q&A. Please feel free to ask questions. Maybe just type them and I'll read them out to Lara. I just find that to be a little bit easier. Okay.
Great. Hopefully everybody can hear me. Thanks for coming. And that is a very happy picture of myself and my husband. We feel a lot of gratitude for having the opportunity to travel. It worked for our work schedules and our life schedules. And it couldn't have been overall a better trip. And also just a really, as Elizabeth said, a really great thing for one of us on the team to be able to really test everything out and see what it's like to travel during COVID and go on safari in Africa. So we were gone for about 9 days. We did get back just over a week ago. And what I wanted to try to talk about today was really just sort of the nuts and bolts a little bit of what it takes logistically, what's different, and then hopefully have some time at the end for some questions from anybody out there who has them. So a couple things just to start off to keep in mind. The first point there, being flexible, is probably one of the most important overall themes, I think, of any travel right now. Flights are more changeable than ever, the international flights. And while, you hopefully, things go smoothly, it's really good to just be mindful that double checking things and having some patience goes a long way, and not necessarily lowering expectations or anything, but just being able to go with the flow a little bit is really important. And another thing that was really crystallized with my own trip and then in working with our clients is working with a safari specialist, hopefully from Extraordinary Journeys, but really our network and how closely we are working with our partners and staying really close in touch with our clients as they travel has been part of the key to success for these clients that have been able to travel. And for my own trip, it really has been, a great illustration of why we have such strong partnerships with our different suppliers in each country, and that has helped everything go very smoothly. And then the other thing to just keep in mind is airline requirements, COVID requirements here, there, things are changing, sometimes rapidly. So it's just important to keep tabs on everything you can. And we also are really able to help with that as well. Oh.
Hi, yeah.
Okay. So getting there, pre-departure requirements. So my trip was to Tanzania, which has the least restriction of all of the countries right now for visiting. They've been open the longest. They do not require a negative test to arrive in country, although we strongly recommend traveling with one for your own, I think, social responsibility, as well as you just never know when something might change. So I think it's a really good idea. The biggest thing is really the international flights having, all of your PPE supplies in place, knowing what to expect when you're arriving so that you've got all your forms ready, which we'll go over in a second. But yeah, there's nothing that's too drastic for Tanzania, but we would walk you through, and we're doing with our other clients. I've got folks that were in Rwanda and then Kenya, lots of different timing that goes into place with COVID tests and transportation logistics. So the team here is really well versed in how all of that is working, and we are, basically hand-holding clients through that process as needed to make sure that they've got everything organized before they leave and with the right timing. And entry requirements, this is just for Tanzania, the same as it always has been: passport with enough space, yellow fever, and I do really strongly recommend the e-visa, which is something that's available for many countries, and it really does help speed things up in immigration, and it's just one less, touch point, really, so good to avoid. And another thing that's really important is travel insurance. It's always been something that's important, but of course, in the day of COVID now, it really is something that's essential to have. And we can help with that as well, give you quotes, but it's just something that you should make sure that you have if you're thinking about traveling. And one thing that has come up, and we think is a good idea, is padding a trip these days with an extra night upon arrival. So in East Africa, most flights would come in the evening, and maybe just adding, instead of just sleeping in Arusha for one night, add a second night, just as a little bit of an insurance policy against flight delays or changes. And it's, if you end up with a day with not too much to do, you can sleep late, have something fun to do in the afternoon, and then be well rested to start your safari, which isn't a bad idea anyway. So on flights, the international flights, my experience, and I think what we're hearing from pretty much all of our clients, flights from the US have been pretty empty. I flew on Delta and Delta KLM to and from Tanzania. My flight on Delta in economy class, that's my husband there, we were two of 9 people in our huge section in economy. So it was really empty. The flight from Europe to Africa and back were both about probably 50 or 60% full. So still not super full, but definitely felt more busy. And I think it is really important to also remember that if you haven't flown yet at all, airports are different right now in the sense that lots of restaurants are, well, most restaurants are closed, most shops are closed. So bringing things to eat and not relying on buying things at the airport is a good idea. Overall, the flights, all of the international flights felt very safe. And there have been a couple of different studies that have come out talking about how safe these big flights are right now. The ventilation systems, I guess, are working really well. There's no higher rate of COVID contracted with people that are flying all the time, like pilots and flight attendants. So, and our experience was people were respectful, people wore masks. It is uncomfortable to wear a mask for a really long time, but for us, it was really worth it. And that's ultimately, we ended up getting those KN95 masks, and they are tight, but they also make you feel kind of safe. So it was definitely worth it. for us to do that. There's several airlines that are flying to Tanzania right now. As I mentioned, Delta KLM is what I took, but we've had clients who've taken a few others. And I think that, you know, as we note here, just good to check in a lot with the airline and have a little bit of extra wiggle room around your timing, just in case timings change. Flights, just again, highlighting some of the things I talked about. You know, everyone on the plane is wearing a mask. The flight attendants all wear gloves, or at least on my flights they did. In-flight meals are a little bit different. The meal itself, I think, is essentially the same, but less frequency. I think that on airlines now, they're just trying to have fewer interactions between the flight attendants and the passengers. So, for example, on our longest flights, they gave us a really nice meal and all the normal things, but then there was like a snack bag that came out later. So it's, especially if you're a little picky, I think it's good to bring, you know, granola bars, nuts. I brought apples with me. I was really glad I had some fresh fruit. But there's certainly, you know, all of the things that you need on the flight. Just, and everything is also wrapped in plastic. So your pillows and your blankets are all wrapped in like a pre-shrunk plastic now. I think to keep everything safe and there's no cross-contamination, it also just makes you feel a little bit safer when you're opening it up and it feels like it's brand new. Just little things, boarding and disembarkation. I think it depends on the flight. We've had some flights that were very orderly, you know, and a different method, and other flights that it was just everybody got up and spaced and got off the plane in the normal manner. And it is really good to bring, they do give you wipes to wipe off your area on all of the flights, but we did bring our own as well, and extra hand sanitizer and extra masks, because wearing the same mask for like 10 hours straight is a little much. So extras of everything is kind of a good idea. Whoops. And these are just some pictures of some of the things that we brought. And like the little amenities kit from another person who traveled on a different airline, just showing it's all pre-wrapped. In the airports, as I mentioned, lots of room. They're not crowded. There's lots of places to sit, and there are these, this is very typical, just, you know, spacing with all the seating in the airports. This is my picture from Amsterdam. It's like adorable shop. Nobody was in it. There's not many people around. There were places to eat more at the Amsterdam airport than in my local Boston airport. But you didn't feel like you didn't have, you know, any options, but I think there's just more limited options. These are some of our EJ travelers, just a little selfie, I think, at the airport, just showing everybody's wearing masks. Some people wear the face shields, and, you know, it's really just as long as you've got a mask on, it's the critical thing. Once you actually get to Tanzania, the first and biggest difference in coming in, if you've ever been there before, is just that there's a health check station. So everybody who gets off the plane, it's a very organized exiting of the plane, coming into the terminal, and then there's multiple health check stations. So it actually moved very quickly, but they take everybody's temperature. You've got a form that you're turning back in where you're supposed to mark if you have any symptoms. And everyone at the airport, for the most part, I wouldn't say 100%, but almost everybody I saw was wearing a mask. There are hand sanitizer stations everywhere. And people are pretty good at being respectful of distances. This is just some shots from airports. This shot is just showing somebody filling out their form, their immigration form. We give everybody forms ahead of time so that you don't have to be like this person necessarily and stand there and fill it out. You should have all that with you ahead of time to fill out, so that, again, it's just fewer places where you're touching things that other people are touching. But people are spaced, it's very orderly. And again, hand sanitizer everywhere, information signs. Oh, and actually those little feet on the ground, the little red footsteps, those are everywhere also at the airport, just to remind people not to be too close to each other. So it felt very orderly at the Kilimanjaro airport. Then your driver will be there waiting for you to pick you up. We were probably maybe 20 minutes to get through the airport and get out. It was really fast. So it was nice. And then actually when we were leaving to come home, you of course have to get to the airport a few hours ahead of time, but it was also not crowded. There are 2 screening checks to leave, and there's a place to get food that was reasonable in the airport. So it all actually, the airport in Tanzania really did work very smoothly. And then to the best part, what is it like on safari now? So if you go through all the travel logistics to get there, it's all things that just make sense. Basically, on your internal domestic flights, all your pilots are going to be wearing masks. Every driver you'll encounter will be wearing a mask. There are really stringent cleaning protocols in place in vehicles, on internal flights. There is, again, hand sanitizer everywhere. If you've been to Tanzania or other countries, you know you come into an international airport, and then like the next morning you're leaving from the domestic airport. There too, sanitizer everywhere, lots of space, lots of signs, and everyone in the domestic flights within Tanzania has to wear a mask. Some countries, especially Kenya, I'm thinking of right now, they require a blue, paper medical mask. In Tanzania, they don't have that requirement, but it's good to have some of those masks with you just in case. I think it's good to have just a couple extra things on hand. But just wearing a mask is enough on the flights. And these are just some pictures of some of the cleaning protocols from some of our partners. So just like the guy on the right-hand side is cleaning the, high touch point areas in the car. The same thing is happening in every mode of transportation that you could think of. Those small aircraft are cleaned all the time. And if anything, I remember getting into one and being like, oh my gosh, it smells like Lysol everywhere in here, but it's good because it was clean. Some of our EJ clients on one of the small flights. And then once you get up to your camp, kind of what it's like in camp, what's different. Most everything is the same. And again, it's really common sense things that you would kind of expect. And those include temperature checks. The staff is masked in camp. We have, and clients are masked where they want to be. There's lots and lots and lots of cleaning protocols in place. And there's a lot of space and distance. So if you've been on safari before, you know that things are very open air in general. But they've really, in the camps, that we know about and that I saw in person, they're doing even more to try to make sure that there's a lot of distance, a lot of places for people to go if they want, just a couple to be by themselves somewhere, and lots of open air places to hang out in the common areas. These are some of the staff members at Lamai, one of the camps I was at, wearing their colorful masks. This nice gentleman was at another camp I visited, Bush Top Smara, serving tea. And this woman worked in the shop at Lamai for the Nomad Trust, which was a great little shop. So it was fun to go and have that still be open. I wore a mask, she wore a mask, all the doors were open. There were actually windows too that were open, except for that one in the back. So it felt really safe. When you come, at some point every day when you're in camp, someone will take your temperature. And this is actually pretty typical. This is the manager at Lamai, and he's taking this person's temperature coming in from their morning game drive. So they usually do the same time every day. And it's really quick and everybody gets it done. There's also these great hand washing stations, and I think every camp has their version of this, but the nomad ones were pedal operated, and kind of like, I have to say it was kind of fun to do that. I really liked washing my hands there because everything was pedal operated, and it was super cute. And it worked really well. So there's also hand sanitizer everywhere, but that was kind of fun and different. Private meals, that's something that happens on safari a lot anyway, but it was definitely happening everywhere that we were. And it was really fun because I think the staff goes out of their way trying to find fun little new places that people can have their different meals throughout the day. And lots of space, lots of distance between different parties. That being said, if you become really great buddies with somebody, other couple in camp or something, and you're comfortable eating with them, that's allowed too. It's not that you have to be by yourselves all the time, but they're really, aware that people are comfortable like that. So anyway, these are just a couple shots of us having some fun meals and me apparently drinking wine. Outdoor settings, just, again, there's just so many different places that somebody can set up a table in a safari camp that is a beautiful setting. And then your tents, area accommodations. We have, being on safari, it's all about open air, netting, breezes, you're not buttoned up. And the cleaning protocols are, again, really stringent. So you've got, lots of fresh air and really, great attention to detail as far as the cleaning. So we felt so safe, in all of our rooms. And at each of the camps we went to, they explained how they clean every light switch, every point where people's hands go are getting extra attention every day too, which was great. There we are again, having sundowners on top of a giant rock, Simba Rock. Outdoor bar. So of course sundowners are a thing. And we were, out every afternoon enjoying a drink somewhere in the Serengeti or Tarangire. So just a few facts for safaris now. The staff in all the camps, besides being masked up, they are getting regular COVID tests. They are quarantined for 2 weeks before they can start working in the camp. If they come off a leave, they have to come back and quarantine. Again, there's sanitizer everywhere. Cars are not full. Some camps are doing private vehicles. It really depends on where you're going. So your EJ specialist would talk to you about that. But at a max, you'd have maybe 2 couples in a car, 4 people. And walking safaris are still a great thing, and something that I was really lucky almost every day. I love walking on safari, so that was great, and a perfect thing for social distancing. And even, if you're in a camp and you're comfortable with your guide not wearing a mask in a situation like that, then you can say, if you feel like taking your mask off while we're on our walk, that's fine, because he was, way in front of us, type of thing. So we did that a few times. Cultural and school visits, there's I think a little less of that happening during COVID. So if it did happen, it would be very well organized and responsible for all parties involved. And I think just as schools begin to open up and things keep changing, if that's something that you're really interested in, we would work with you on how to make that happen and what's possible. Oops. And then the best part about being on safari is just being on safari. So enjoying all the animals. We had great sightings. This trip was a true vacation for me. It was a celebration. My husband and I both had big birthdays this year and a big anniversary. So it was really great to just have time by ourselves doing one of the things we love most in the world, which was wonderful. And hanging out with lions was great. Getting out on those walking safaris. That's in Tarangire, which was really spectacular. They seem to have a lot of good lion pictures here. Little cubs having their wildebeest for breakfast. And there's lots and lots and lots of wildebeest. And that was one of my driving factors, was really that I had never seen the migration in full swing, and had never seen a crossing. So to have the chance to go a year this year where, there were really so few people around, and it was a particularly good year. It is a good year for the migration. It was just such a treat. And we caught a couple of different crossings. This was like a mini crossing. It wasn't a big river. It was a tributary. But there's just so many animals around. It was just so cool to be out and be like, oh, and there's a bunch of wildebeest crossing the river. This was one of the big crossings on the Mara River, which was really amazing to witness and very exciting. More lions. This one was right near Mara Bush Tops, and she was a beauty. So yeah, it was just an amazing vacation, a great experience. And, I think one of the things that we thought for this webinar was, hopefully, again, we'll do some Q&A in a few minutes, but just, to get people thinking that you can travel now if you're interested. It is not going to be for everybody, for sure. But if you feel the urge and you want to, look into it, we certainly encourage you to do that. And just a couple of reasons why to travel now. The next couple of months are going to probably stay quiet, certainly probably until next spring in Africa. And just having the chance to be in these amazing places. I mean, the migration's in the northern Serengeti now. In a few months, it'll be down south. And it's also a fantastic time to go and see the migration when there are baby animals everywhere, lots of predator-prey action, and go when there's hardly anybody there. I mean, go and have an amazing experience. Same thing as Elizabeth mentioned with gorilla trekking. Just having fewer people around for something like that is also a real treat. One of the things that I know, but it was really highlighted to me on the ground, was how important tourism is. These are places that we at EJ care about very much, and probably a lot of you do as well. And just remembering that there is the big trickle-down effect to all of the different communities where the people from your camps work. And that also ties right into local conservation of the wildlife in these areas. So it really is a positive feeling to be there, a positive thing to do, and people are so appreciative. Everybody was just so excited to have visitors and to hear about what it was like where we are too. So it's also like a really cool global connection time, I think, right now. Again, as I highlighted before, ultimate in open air places to stay and activities. It feels really safe when you're there. You are never inside with other people. Oops. There are definitely a few deals to be had, so ask us if you are interested. There are definitely, different companies are doing different things to make traveling in the next few months really appealing to international travelers. Flights are low density. Probably that will start going up. I guess I hope so that more people will be traveling. But again, those international flights are feeling super safe. And probably my biggest thing too is just that it was great to be on vacation. I think all of us have been through so much these last months, and not some more than others, but just having an actual vacation and not being in your normal bubble for a little while was fantastic. And I was super connected. My kids were back in the US. I was traveling. We talked every day. Felt easy. It didn't feel like I was too far away, but boy, it was nice to actually be away. So it was great. So hopefully if we have a few questions, Elizabeth can see.
Yeah.
Is there anything?
Yeah, so if everyone just wants to kind of type in some questions, I'm happy. Lara here is, she can answer them. Just anything you want to know of what it's like out there. I see Laura, who's traveled with us before. Hi, Laura. You had a few questions. I mean, you have one question about there have been fires on Mount Kilimanjaro. So if anyone's doing Kilimanjaro climb, we don't have anyone doing Kilimanjaro climb. So I'm going to be honest, I have been following it, but not in total detail because it hasn't affected so many people traveling right now. The fires are out. No one, as far as I'm concerned, has been hurt. But I don't know all the details of how much, has been destroyed or not. I would have to get back to you on that. In terms of our travelers, if anyone's gotten sick from COVID on our trips, no. Have they before they traveled? I'm actually not 100% sure. I know, so not anyone who's traveled with us has gotten COVID on their trips. Another question is, okay, so let's see. Any word of when South Africa and Namibia might open up? Namibia's open. Namibia's open. South Africa, whew, that is a tough one. They are open, they're just not open to Americans. That will probably change because they are getting a lot of pressure. Americans just are such a big, I mean, they're some of the biggest travelers for South Africa. So I'm now hearing early December, but just no one knows. But I think it will, I am now getting word that it will be like early December. Significant discounts, it's not significant discounts. There are discounts, there are things that can be done. There also is, you know, so much of Africa is conservation oriented. And I think another thing is it doesn't become viable just to send people, you know, there's a point where it's just too cheap and it's just not worth it. And then there are other parts that are just hard because like flights are not discounted right now and the park fees aren't discounted. So discounts, but I wouldn't say you're going to get 75% off. You may 25% off or something. So that's just something to keep in mind. I don't want to oversell that part either. I think the big draw most of all is just being alone and just having less people. And that's definitely kind of the feedback we've been getting. Let's see, how much in advance? Oh, there's so many questions. How much advance time is required to book Africa? Lara, do you want to answer that one?
Well, I think we've had some success with bookings that have been within like a week. So it can be very fast, depending. If you know what you want to do and you are serious about it, then just let us know. And we'll talk you through what the best options are, you know, just know how much time you can take off and we can make a plan.
I would say, here's my take on it is right now, I had a booking, the client paid on Monday, they were on a flight that Friday to go to Zambia. I can be that fast right now. I would say for 2021, the biggest problem we're having is that everyone in 2020 postponed to 2021. So we're just kind of in this weird situation where short term right now is easy. We can do it with no advance planning. And then 2021 is starting to be difficult because we're having space issues because so many people have postponed their trips. And then 2022 opens up again. So it's just a little bit Okay. If the schools are closed until January 2021, does this mean that there's a lot of COVID in the local population? Celia, that is it's a very complicated question. And it depends where in Africa. In general, COVID has actually not hit Africa in any way that Europe or the United States or South America. They haven't had the same number of cases. To be fully transparent, Tanzania has also decided to stop counting COVID. So they just were like, we're not counting it anymore. With that said, we've been also talking to a lot of people on the ground, talking to doctors, and they have not seen significant increases or anything. It's not like they're hiding bodies or something that we just don't know. I mean, Lara, what's your take on that?
Yeah, I asked pretty much anybody that I could those questions because it isn't super transparent in Tanzania right now, and that was basically my takeaway too. Is that it seemed like people knew people that were sick early on, April timeframe, and then it has been much lower. The school closure, I think, is very is something that isn't across the board, but a lot of schools are closed, and I think it's just precaution.
And it's actually interesting, Laura, who is, I see on the conversation, she's very involved with the school in Tanzania called SEGA. And she's saying they're not closed actually. So it's interesting. I think some areas are closed. I know in Kenya they're closed. Tanzania,
And there's I think parts of Arusha, there are schools that are closed and parts aren't. So it just depends. But as far as school visits go, it's something that can't be counted on right now, I think is probably more what we were trying to say before.
But otherwise, so other than Tanzania, that has not been very transparent with data, all the other countries actually have been, Kenya, Rwanda, Namibia, and other places. You know, Africa is a very young continent. 75% of the population is under the age of 30. Young people live in cities, older people live in rural areas. Most areas are very rural, so I think they just haven't had that many, when you're outdoors and it's more rural, you're just not getting as many COVID cases. Because they're younger, I think they're just stronger, and so they're just not really getting sick. Another thing that is interesting is the government did take very proactive decisions from the get-go. And one thing they did that I think was probably quite smart is they did put curfews and stop drinking. And so, I think that's already right there, by not allowing people to go out and drink and make bad decisions in the evening. I think that already helped enormously. And people do wear masks, probably more in Rwanda, Kenya, Namibia, somewhat in Tanzania. But we do have to be honest. It's not, Lara, it's not everyone's wearing masks all the time, and we have to be
not out on the street, but you're also, the average tourist isn't just walking around in Arusha, so it's, it was interesting to see from the car, just people walking around aren't necessarily all masked up, but everybody that I encountered in a close proximity was masked, so I felt comfortable with that.
Okay. Let's see, I'm just trying to read through the questions. There was a question from Janice about poaching and decreased vehicles and travelers. Absolutely, that is a big problem. Tourism has really helped the anti-poaching effort, and because there's a lot of money coming from tourism, towards the parks and just paying all those fees, and then all the vehicles on the ground are a form of anti-poaching. At the same time, what was surprising, I think, because the international flights have shut down so much, they have not been able to have the large-scale poaching so they're seeing it. It has increased, but probably not as much as they thought it would to some extent. There are other, but it is still very hard, and it's still kind of a battle on the ground. And one of the problems, what they're worried about is bushmeat more than anything, like poaching, just because people they have lost their jobs, they do need some form of something. Lara, again, I'd love to hear what people said on the ground.
It's something that didn't come up a lot on this trip. I did ask so in both, I was in Tarangire National Park and Serengeti National Park, and in both places I went for safari walks, and you have somebody from the parks with you, so it's not somebody from camp, but somebody who carries a rifle for your walk. And both of those gentlemen, I did ask if they had seen increases in poaching, and in Tarangire they said no. In the Serengeti, he said not really. There's always some on peripheral areas, and unfortunately it's these wire snares a lot of the time. It's two. So we had seen 2 elephants in the Serengeti that both had their trunks, must have been caught in a snare where the end of their trunk was gone. And then at one camp, they knew there was a lion that had come into contact with a snare and was injured and had to be treated. So that's what I heard of, but it didn't seem like it was anything extreme or more necessarily than usual. There are other parts of Tanzania where I think it's probably a little worse, probably in the west and the south, in those parks. I would imagine it's a bit worse. And in other places where there haven't, in a place maybe like, in another country that maybe the country's just opening up, it could be a bit different.
Okay, in terms of the COVID test, there are a lot of, there are still some unknowns. So for Tanzania, you do not need a COVID test. So that's not an issue. In Kenya, you need every country's a little different. In Kenya, you need to get a COVID test before 96 hours before arrival. So if you got a positive COVID test 96 hours before arrival. And if you think it's a false positive, then, we take your test. If you are really sick with COVID and you have travel insurance, you would be covered as a sick person who has travel insurance and have everything that goes with travel insurance in that case. If you're on the ground, the only place that tests you again on the ground is Rwanda. So the way Rwanda works is you get a COVID test within 5 days of departure, and then upon arrival, you would get another COVID test. And they have the test. I mean, the turnaround is exceptionally fast. It's like 8 hours, maybe 24 they give you up to 24 hours. So they would have the option of testing again. And if you are really sick, there are facilities, there are some really great hospitals there too. And then it would also fall under all the terms and conditions of your travel insurance, and the type of care, or if they have to put you in a special area to quarantine. And every country is a little different. And, we do have the teams on the ground who handle all of that and would help. And also the travel insurances help with that as well. We do work with AMRIF, and AMRIF is, I think, very key because they're flying doctors, and they've been also kind of facilitating. They can do the testing. They can fly you back from camp to either a private hospital, for example, in Nairobi, and just kind of make a decision of what we should do in that case. Knock on wood, I hope no one gets COVID while traveling. Okay, yeah, I think, the facilities, the healthcare facilities, there are also private hospitals. So, if it does get overwhelmed, we would know before a trip. Right now, they're not seeing the huge surges of COVID, but, again, being flexible and keeping an eye on all these things is something, again, we're asking for flexibility because plans may change, and, we're not saying COVID may not pick up in Africa. As of now, somehow, it's they are not getting huge surges of COVID, and their hospitals are not full, and there are a lot of private clinics and hospitals where you can get great care in Africa as well. Quarantine upon return in the US, Lara.
It depends on where you live. I think each state is different. So I don't profess to know, except my own state. Here, we are supposed to quarantine for 2 weeks unless you get a negative test. So my husband and I had a test scheduled for we arrived in the evening. We had a test scheduled for the next morning. We came home, we wore masks in the house with our kid. It didn't get too close, got that test back within 24 hours that was negative, and then scheduled a second follow-up test for 5 days later to make sure, God forbid something happened walking off the airplane or something like that. And we also were negative for that. So there are, I think, different rules in different states. And it would be one of the things that you just need to see what your state allows, and make sure that you're comfortable with that. It would be a pain to be, we had our car companions at one of the camps were from the UK, and they had to quarantine for 2 weeks in the UK. They didn't have anything. There was no choice. So I think you just have to check where you live and see what the situation is.
What I think is interesting is that, we talk about the travel requirements to Tanzania. In the United States, they don't even have a form, do they, asking you where you came from?
Nobody asked us anything coming back. Nobody took our temperature. Nobody asked us where, besides just, we have global entry. So we really didn't talk to anybody. We just scanned our passports and left. So it really was very, it is interesting what different countries do. So yeah, a lot of rules here.
I see a lot of questions about insurance. Actually, Rachel, are you there? Rachel is actually, Rachel in our office is our insurance specialist. So things are always changing a little bit with insurance. One of the questions is, have there been an increase in travel insurance premium because of COVID? Rachel, have you seen increases in the cost?
You know, most travel insurances, especially the ones that we recommend, are based on age and trip cost. I have seen increases in premiums for older travelers, specifically 70 plus. Nothing too crazy, but that is definitely the area in which I've seen them increased. And then let's see, I'm just reading.
There's another one about if you have a trip planned and postponing. Again, you should have been in touch with Rachel.
Yeah, and I can absolutely reach out. I know, I think is Marsha Hudson that mentioned that that you had a travel insurance policy for a trip that has been postponed. We can always modify the current insurance policy that you're on to cover your new dates. I'd be happy to touch base with you when we finish up the call. I do remember chatting with you, I think back in June. And then I think I saw one more about travel insurance. Maybe that was
and again, you know, anyone who is traveling with us, or, you know, I think, you know, always call us. We are around. Rachel has dealt with every travel insurance situation. We also now have other travel insurance if you want to get canceled for any reason. So we could almost make a whole presentation about travel insurance, because we've learned a lot about travel insurance as well through COVID. So I'm happy to, you know, always feel free to call us if you have any questions about that. There is an interesting question about traveling through Europe to get to Africa, because there are very few direct flights from Africa, from the United States to Africa. So that's not an issue, right? I mean, as long as you stay in the airport, that's not a problem.
There was, we had filled out one form that actually no one ended up taking, but at the Amsterdam airport, we were supposed to fill out a little traveler form that just, it was like a health form that ended up being that nobody took it. We left one gate and went to the next gate, and no one even took it from us. So that was just Amsterdam. I don't know, other countries may have different protocols, but there was no issue at all.
Sorry, my 2-year-old just got home. So if you hear a little child screaming, it is his nap time and he is unhappy. I see a few more questions about postponing again. If you're not comfortable, yeah, just talk to us. I mean, we are, you know, all of this is, we're talking to properties. We will do what is comfortable for you. And yes, if you want to rebook, talk to us. You know, we'll just reach out to the property. So, you know, talk to us about it. No problems at all. So yeah. So I hope, you know, sorry.
I can wrap up if you want to.
That would be great. Thank you.
Sure thing. So, and I can't see the question. So I think if you have a question that we haven't been able to get to today, please reach out directly. My email is my name, Lara, Lara, @ejafrica.com, or always info@ejafrica.com, or just give us a call. We're here, as Elizabeth just said, we're ready to help. And yeah, and I'd love to, you know I have a lot of my own clients listening. Yeah, anybody who wants to call and chat about what my experience was, please feel free. I am here and look forward to connecting with everybody. So we really appreciate everyone's time today and interest. And it's great to know that there's so many people that are still thinking about Africa. So it's great. And it really was a remarkable experience. And I am just so thankful that we got to go. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you so much.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.
Bye.